When ordinary people think of autumn, they imagine shorter days, cozy fires, curling up with a great piece of literature, and basking in the warming scent of cinnamon with shades of burnt orange, which your other half has decided to spend the life savings on to decorate the home for only 2 months, just as God intended. Yet we must remember that this transition into the frosty abyss of winter creates the perfect conditions for the spread of the pathogen known as Halloween. This disease causes people to dress like demons and go door to door asking for free stuff. This public service announcement aims to give you the correct tool to help you deal with these contagious commie behaviors when they manifest in your local community. First, you'll want to arm yourself with multiple shots of the best-selling paperback on Amazon called The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns. With this PPE, you're fully equipped and well protected to handle what's to come next. Second, have a pumpkin spice latte and white girl autumn your time away in knitted cream shackets and pilgrim hats, because soon enough, Samhain begins. This is when the veil between the spirit realm and the physical world is at its thinnest, and possession, the main symptom of Halloween, is more commonly presented, causing this type of unironic cringe to start happening. Just look at him. This poor soul thinks he looks cool. And if you're not careful, this could be you. Together we can stop the spread of Halloween and flatten the curve. When you see fully grown adults playing dress-up and mirroring unspeakable horrors from beyond the void, remember your training and cure their vapid sense of self-identity by handing them one of our favourably reviewed treatments. Your country must develop herd immunity to seasonal cringe. So, spread the cure far and wide. Just like the cure, this disease does not discriminate by age. Emulating the infected, you will see children running around in bedsheets, knocking on doors, begging for sugary treats, and threatening to damage your well-earned property. Make sure to fill their novelty buckets with the one thing all children secretly want: a well-rounded and relatable education in biblical history. That'll stop the spread. The Nephilim Look Like Clowns and the inevitable booster volumes are currently the only known cure to thinly veiled demon channeling holidays. This is your best defense against this pandemic of spooky proportions. All you have to do is trust the science. Which you know we did, because I'm showing you people wearing lab coats and looking serious. Get your copy on Amazon today, and be prepared for tomorrow. Side effects of reading The Nephilim Look Like Clowns include, but are not limited to, a feeling of existential crisis, a well-rounded knowledge of a Christian contrarian view on human history, a foundational understanding of spiritual warfare, and a healthy aversion to clowns.
Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Welcome to another episode of the Truther Therapy Sessions, episode 66. I think it's been quite a long time since I've done another one of these ones. I think it was the 2nd of September since my last episode. And what can I say? I've just been busy. I've been talking to a lot of people. I've been got a few guests on there. I've been doing podcasts, been doing shows. And, you know, I think I need a rest. And I'm going to let somebody else today do a bit of sharing and a bit of talking about what they've been researching. So I've got a recurring guest on back with me. I've got Vinny B. Vinny's a regular on many other podcasts, including the Killer Priest podcast. He's a man who just likes to talk about anything that's on his mind related to conspiracy, and he's really digging this millennial reign subject, like the rest of us. So I've brought him back on, and Vinny's going to have a bit of a talk with us today about some new ideas he's been mulling around in his head. Vinny, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Paul. Great to be back. You know, I'm so excited that I've gotten to meet you and I get to come and do these shows with you. I see your book's doing good. I mean, I'm just really excited, and I want to give you props and shout out to you, Paul, all the work you're doing. So
thanks, Vinny. I appreciate it. Yeah, the channel has grown a lot since we last talked. Actually, what am I on now? Something like 74,000. That kind of came out of nowhere. And it was actually, funnily enough, the thing that did that was a discussion about parasites. That's what did it. That's what brought a huge influx of people to my channel, and still feel like guilty about that because it was Alpha Talks who came on and did the presentation, and it was his work, but it brought loads of people to my channel. So I've been telling people, go over there, go to him. Like, I just sat there like an idiot in silence, just nodding along. You know what I mean? I had nothing to do with that. But I've actually just done another talk with Vitali a few days ago on Wednesday, and I've just finished editing it and uploaded it last night. And it's going live on Tuesday, so it's round 2 of the Parasite, Our Demons connection. It's a really weird one. And hopefully that should obviously bring more traction to him as well. Fingers crossed. But yeah, that brought like, I don't know, 15,000 people to the channel or something. Like, it just in like a month, less than a month. And I'm like, wow, that is incredible.
Well, all the networking, I mean, that's what's great, that it's just growing and growing. I mean, for me, let me give another shout out to you, Paul. I mean, I got to go on Question the Narrative podcast, which I know you've been on. Got to meet those guys. I went on there twice. But one that I wanted to say is one of the shows I did with you, there's this flat earther. He's called Tyler, the Fittest Flat Earther. I guess he's like really big on Instagram and others, like 500,000 subscribers or whatever. I didn't know the guy, but he happened to be listening to me and you, Paul. I think it was the first show I did with you. So he was impressed by it, and he wrote these guys at the Firmamental podcast. And they hit me up. They were like, man, this guy told us this is like the best show he's heard to get you on. So I went on there, and Firmamental, like Alex and Raul, shout out to them, the Firmamental podcast. Those guys are great. And shout out to Tyler, the Fittest Flat Earther, for making that happen. So it's been great, man. You should, I know they'd love to have you on that podcast too one day. I know you're busy, but one day I'm sure it'd be cool.
Yeah, just send them my email, and I'll gladly talk with them and see if we can get anything on the books. But yeah, I'm pretty booked up.
Yeah, because
like 2 months in advance these days. About 2 months in advance if they've got to wait nowadays. Yeah, something.
Because I talked a little bit about the Millennial Kingdom and some of my stuff, but then I'm like, Paul's the guy. You are the guy to me that's leading this and doing the most amount of work. So
I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm a leader.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so it's been great, and thank you again for these shows and all the people I'm getting to meet.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, it's a networking thing. We're all just in it together. Let's just have a conversation and see where it leads. And if I'm finding now I'm bumping into a lot of people who kind of know other people I know, and it's all kind of become one big network now of people kind of connecting with each other to talk about these particular topics, like I said, the Millennial Kingdom, and that's kind of the growing one right now. And that's kind of when you first got in touch with me. You were like, this is the next big thing. Like, this topic cannot be ignored. And I was very much the same. I was like, you're right. We can't just leave this. This needs fleshing out some more. And you were like, let's just have a talk about it. So yeah, go on, let's do it. And yeah, it's been fun conversation. I think last time you were on, you shared about the acanthus plant and the pillars, and how the acanthus is on the top of the pillars and its relations to the thorn, the crown of thorns that Christ wore, and how these are not like Greco-Roman designs, but maybe references to the Millennial Kingdom. And I thought, that what a great connection that is. What an amazing thing. So I clipped that.
And the harrowing of hell.
Oh,
the harrowing of hell.
That's right,
which I can't wait to see that. This time I have another thing coming out I could mention is Gog and Magog. For people to check out the trailer. It's coming out in January. It's done by Muslims. Because for people who don't know, in the Quran, the Muslims go big into Gog and Magog. Is a really big part of it, and they give a lot of details. Some of the stuff, I'm willing to talk about tonight. I was one of the people on your show talking about the Muslims, how I think that was actually a Christian sect. I did a lot, like a lot of people came because of the Anatoly Flamenco stuff that I was doing. So that's what a lot of people get me with the timeline deception stuff.
Yeah.
So wait, start with that one, the
Sure.
timeline one. I sent you an email.
You did,
Um,
yeah.
so this is for the audience. Now, with the flamenco stuff where I was talking about the coins and things being dated, how they added 1,000 years in, how there used to be an I or a J. So a couple months ago, I'm at a family thing with my family, and my uncle tells me he's got a copy of his grandfather, my great grandfather, or something like that, coming from Italy to America, and he's got the paperwork, and that's what I sent you, Paul.
Yeah,
So right,
I've got it up on the screen now so the guys can see it. Yeah.
okay. So if you could zoom into the date for them, uh, it's 1921 is what people are going to say is the year. But if you look, it's clearly an I separated and then 921. Now,
Yeah.
do you see it?
Yeah, well, it says, first of all, says Anno Domini I896 is when they were born, I think. Yeah, and then it says they arrived, was it in America, in Anno Domini I921?
So the year 921, I being Isa, that's the Arabic. Their name for Jesus is Isa, Isa.
Mm-hmm.
So the I is again for Jesus in Aramaic. So it's funny because even in that paperwork, if you look at the bottom, he's also has to like take an allegiance to like, I think there was a king of Italy at the time, Victor Emmanuel, something like that. So he's like disowning it, and you got to like swear. Doesn't it say like no polygamy and this and that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like serious Christian stuff, you know?
It says, I am not an anarchist. I am not a polygamist, nor a believer in the practice of polygamy. And it is my intention in good faith to become a citizen of the United States of America and to permanently reside therein, so help me God. Yeah. Right. Do you know what that really... as soon as I was reading that, I was thinking, like, how the hell is there such a large Mormon contingent in the US? You know what I mean? Like, who obviously practice polygamy, and I thought, what is going on here? Like, it's very bizarre.
So yeah, so to me again, and that was great because it's got 921. So there's a one in it, and you can see the one is different. It's a one, and those other ones is clearly an I. So yeah, I wanted to share that because that's a personal thing that I just found from my family, and it backs up what I was trying to say with the flamenco books, that they've definitely manipulated our timelines, and they've turned those eyes into a one and added 1,000 years onto a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, just to clarify for the people who may not be aware of it, do you want to just give a quick overview of Flamenco and his work and what you have come to understand about the timeline from his work? Just a very quick, as much as we go for 10 minutes or 5, whatever it takes. Let's just give it a quick. Yeah,
I mean, they're these Russian scholars, like top of the line, degrees in mathematics and science, awards, and Anatoly Fomenko is the name of the head guy. There's other guys involved too, and they did a lot of research, and they created a series called History, Fact, or Fiction. And don't forget, I told your audience, anyone wants, I will literally give you the stuff for free, 21 PDFs. You could read all these books for yourself. And in one of them, they go big into the timeline deception, how it was created by Joseph Scaliger and then Titus, like 70 years later. So basically, like the Jesuits and them, there's one guy creating this timeline. They go into all these different things to prove that history isn't that old. So yeah, that's a little bit of who Anatoly Fomenko and them are. With them, they go into these coins, saying how they added 1,000 years in. So it's something that, that was one of the things I first talked about a lot in the first show. If people want to go and look at that to find out more of that.
Yeah, he did a lot of things. He's a mathematician. He was like quite a very well-renowned mathematician in Russia. And he has some amazing artwork as well, really technical line drawing, psychedelic mathematical principle artwork. Like, it's ridiculous. And he's showing some odd things in his work, like really strange things. So I'm wondering what this guy knows or how much of a connection to the occult this guy really has. But that aside, I think one of the main arguments, I think it was Topher was telling me this from Biocharisma podcast. Chris, he was explaining how Fomenko kind of just looked at the population numbers and he ran the math on the populations that we have today, and he was like, "This doesn't make any sense. Like, he's saying there's not enough people based on the amount of time we should have had in our history." He's basically saying we should have like 15 to 20 billion people here if it's been this long.
Yeah,
but we're missing 1,000 years, so we have what's equivalent to this amount of time, which adds to his theory that 1,000 years has just been added that doesn't exist. And it's like anything, it's just running the numbers, just running the math on population growth and where we should actually be, including things like plagues and deaths and genocides. You kind of put it all into this model. It's like, nope, this does not make any sense whatsoever. And I thought that was a really good point as well.
No, they do a lot. I mean, there's the 21 books that I'm giving out. I mean, they go into basically so many different things. Swords, the military aspects of things, dendrochronology, like trying to find really, and the coins and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I wanted to share that I found another thing showing these eyes on it, where the people at that time didn't think they were in 1921. They thought they were in 921. And to me, was that the 1,000-year reign when the Millennial Kingdom happened? It was set up where they knew there was going to be like 1,000 years, and it was all reset and set to the time of Jesus, which would make me think that 9/11, 2001 was that like the 1,000-year end or something like that. It's funny that Jesuits have on their rings 9/11. There's a lot of scholars who believe that 9/11 is Jesus's birthday. So was 9/11 2001 actually the 1,000 years or something I said years ago? Just a crazy theory to throw out there. Again, to audience, I don't think I know everything. Just like Paul, we like to talk with you, the audience, and get these ideas out there. So that's what I'm doing. People could correct me or teach me things too. But these are just ideas and stuff. And I thought that would be crazy, right? If that was exactly the 1,000 years ending.
Well, you're not the first to say this on the channel. There was a Breaking the Hostility. I think it's 1979 or something, the rest of his channel name. I had him on to talk. He had a conversation with JT about this. And he believes that it was 2001. That was the year, the changing of the millennium. That was the year of the release of Satan, basically, and that was the end of the 1,000 years. So, and he does the similar thought process to you. I think is why same timing. He says the timing of it. It seems that's where we actually would be, and that's when it actually happened. And everyone thinks it's like, oh, it must have been the 1700s or the 1800s or something. But he was explaining how, well, it seems like if he was going off the book of Second Esdras, which is kind of like a book that wasn't. You've got to go and find it to read it, but it's packed.
I actually have that in my notes because I was going to.
And I think he explains in there that when Christ reigns, he's only actually on Earth for about 400 years, and then he recedes, and his city's hidden under a force field of some kind. Basically, it's like it's veiled of some kind. Then there's like a remaining 600-year period where things start to degrade, basically. and it's not as millennial reigny as we would have hoped, but the initial work had been done. And then obviously things are still great. Humanity's still the best it's ever been. The devil's still locked up, but human sin starts seeping back in again. And I think things naturally start to decay a little bit. And that might explain why it seemed like mankind was left to their own devices where Christ wasn't around. And then things started to happen in the 1700s, the 1800s, as this decay started to set in, basically. And he was also, and it's kind of like, in a way, he was explaining how there's this period of time before the devil's release where humanity's left alone. Basically, he was talking about the metaphor of the woman in the wilderness, and describing that as the people that were left at the millennial reign. He says the woman will be taken to the wilderness and protected for a short time, or something like. And I can't remember the chronology of it all now and what he was trying to explain. Maybe you have something there. I don't know, but there's just so many interesting stories there about the millennial reign isn't necessarily going to be what we think it is towards the end of it. And like I said, if the kingdom's eternal, Christ's kingdom is eternal. The kingdom doesn't end after 1,000 years. Satan's just released after 1,000 years. and the saints ruled with him for 1,000 years. So that's all we know. But Jesus rules forever. So I think that's what Edris was trying to explain in a way. I think it explains as a point towards the end where the veil's lifted on that city again. This hidden city, this beloved city, this Mount Zion, whatever it is. In some spiritual sense or a physical sense, I don't know. But would you have any thought or ideas? You share what you know. I just remembered all
that. So I remember, and the people who remember me, I know a lot of people were focusing towards the north, and I was someone who's saying I focus on Antarctica. I do believe that it's a physical location, that this is set aside, like what you were just saying. And that's why I think it's what's past this ice wall out in Antarctica. There's more land. That's something I wanted to get into today. There has to be more land, and we're going to get into that. So I believe that Mount Zion, New Jerusalem, this holy city, the Camp of Saints, is all the way out there. Now, what's all the way up in the north? Now, again, for people who don't know, I'm someone who doesn't believe in the circular dish model. I believe in, like, I call it a square earth, like almost like you're looking at a map, like what maps are with squares or rectangles. And I believe that the east and the west are geographical locations. That's how I read things literal. And, when they're talking about the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, those aren't directions to me. Those are geographical locations, like a beginning and an end. And so to me, I have a square earth cosmology in my head. So when you get into Gog and Magog, and I'm reading some of these stories, one is from the Quran. The Quran describes it as being that they were imprisoned in the north, in the northern gate. And the other one is this thing that was part of Christian stories in the beginning. It's called Alexander's Gate, or it was like Alexander's Romance from Antiquities. The Book of the Bee was another one, B, like Bee. These were early books where they talk about Alexander the Great. Basically, like he goes around conquering everything, never lost a battle. He goes east and west, he's conquering. And then he meets these people, Gog. And it's weird because the way they describe it, I'm not being like racist or anything. I'm just pointing out the way it sounds is he talks about like small slanted eyes and a flat face. And they talk about this being the people from Japhet. So it sounds like they're almost described as Asians in appearance, but they're like these savages basically. And Alexander's praying to God, and he basically imprisons these people. And there's some argument, I guess, there's some difference between the Muslim and Christian, not much, but I think the Muslims, they don't want to admit that it's Alexander, so they try to say it's like Sirius or Darius, like some Arab leader. But it seems like he basically puts up a wall, is the story, and it's like iron and copper. So that's why it can't be the Great Wall of China, where people want to insinuate that that's Gog and Magog and the Great Wall. That wall is stone, so that's not the wall. But this thing is described as being up in the north. So I'm thinking that this is past the North Pole out there, that there's this place where they were trapped in between these two mountains, and they built this wall so that these people couldn't leave. And this is where, they talk about there's like, a trillion of them, right? 999 for every one of us, more than the sands in the sea. And we all are like, where are these people, right? We look at the map that we all are shown, and we can't figure out, right? Like, who are these people? Where is this location? It's not on that map. It's this extra land that they won't let us see, and we've never seen these maps. And I believe that's to the north. That's what the Quran says. That's what these old Christian books about Alexander's Gate is describing, that it's in the north. And what's crazy is in one of these stories, Paul, it talks about there's 22 kingdoms. And in one of them, it's the only name I recognized was Ashkenazi. So one of these people were Ashkenazi. But then it's weird because I think you would get into it because they talk about almost like like the Nephilim clowns, like dog men, lizard people, like there's are all these weird things that we've talked about. Like you talk about great with the clowns, the Nephilim looking like clowns, that there's these kingdoms that are being held back.
Mm.
And basically every day these people are like digging, trying to get out. But an angel comes every day and just like it's like Groundhog's Day, just an endless loop. They think they're getting out, but then they don't, and it's just reset until that moment. The Quran, it's basically, you know, the Antichrist Dajjal comes, then Jesus, Isa, comes. In their story, when you know God is the only one who knows the time where Gog and Magog are let loose, and it's basically described. That's why I hope we could see this trailer. It's like, you know, it's almost like this zombies, like endless zombies coming out. They're described like going to a lake and they just start drinking it and they just devour the whole lake. The whole lake is gone. Like it's just like locusts. Like they just come and just devouring everything. In the Quran, Jesus is basically like hiding in a cave, waiting and letting this stuff go on at first. And yeah, I feel like this Gog Magog and this extra land, this is how we could answer it, is that's actually what they're saying is up in the north, and that this is set aside. I think it might be like the northeastern corner. It is because they were talking about the east, the north and east. These were eastern people. So it could be something like that, where there's this extra land and they're being held back. And it's, you know, because clearly what we see, we don't see trillions of people somewhere. We don't see Gog and Magog on the map we're looking at.
Well, that's what it says in Revelations 20. It's like the devil will be let loose, and he'll gather an army after deceiving all of the nations, Gog and Magog, from the four corners of the earth to surround the camp of saints. It's kind of like whose number is of the sands of the sea. That alone is odd because it's kind of like, well, there aren't that many people. There aren't that many humans, and you know, you look at the sands of any shore, and there's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of grains of sand. Now, the sands of the sea, like in this vast ocean, like it's incomprehensible numbers we're talking here.
Exactly.
We're talking about numbers so large that they can't be quantified. You know, there's something odd here. It's kind of, well, where do these come from? And people have speculated, oh, well, maybe it's the spirits of the Nephilim. There's billions of them, you know, and they'll come back in a physical sense and be a part of that army or something. You know, I've heard that before.
The Muslims are trying to say that this is somewhere underground, that these people are being held underground and they're trying to crawl out of it. But that's not what I'm reading. I'm taking it more literal. And again, I think that there is more land that we don't know about to the north and to the south. And that this ice is basically like what you were saying before, like, let's say Jesus was here 400 years, 600, and then he's like withdrawn from it, and they're at the camp of the saints, and there's like they're protecting it. They're letting the time go on for this moment, you know, the basically the end of time, the end, right? And so you brought up Revelation 20. I want to bring up this point. Shout out to my best friend Matt. He's pointing out Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Revelation 20. So this is where I think we could tie in Millennial Kingdom again, where Ezekiel 38 and 39 is talking about Israel, and that there's literally like a dragon, or it seems like a dragon or God or whatever is represented like that. And God is described as putting a hook in its jaw to like pull it towards Israel, because he's having Israel get destroyed by this. And they talk about, like, after this event, like they were able to just burn the shields for wood. There was just endless piles of shields that for 7 years they were able to burn these shields and this and that. And this is where God's in control and God uses them. Now, Revelations 20 is talking about Satan is the one in charge during the short season, goes around deceiving the nations and gathers Gog and Magog. So to me, me and Matt are like, wait, this is two different events. And this is something that I know you and your audience and us, we've talked about, like even with an Antichrist, are they you know, there was the original one like 70 AD, and now they're like faking another one, right? So this is what we're saying is we think the Gog Magog event, that there was a first one that would have led into the Millennial Kingdom, which is what Ezekiel 38 and 39 was describing. But Revelation 20 is talking about after the Millennial Kingdom. And that's where it's not going to be like what was described in 38, 39. And we're feeling that a lot of Christians haven't figured this out and they're maybe getting it confused and they're mixing it together. And then when you make, I mean, how could you make sense of it? And one of them, God is the one in control and of Gog. And then in the other one, it's saying the devil's in control, right? And that he's in control of God because it's two different events. That's what we're thinking, which would tie into the Millennial Kingdom again, where we feel like there was an Antichrist then, and now there's going to be like a second one. Like this is going to be a play of the first one. And Gog and Magog, I believe, happened back then too, that there was this event that happened where that Ezekiel 38 and 39 is describing. But I believe Revelations 20 is talking about the future one that's coming, which I believe is going to be coming from the north. And in this one, there's not going to be like, there's not going to be a need to be burning shields for 7 years after this. It's the end. You know what I mean? The whole world and everything changes. So that wouldn't make sense either, right? So that's why we're trying to point out that Ezekiel 38, 39 and Revelation 20, we're talking about two different events with Gog and Magog.
Yeah,
and
I can see that too. I can see that. I can absolutely see that. There's two different times, different measures, different things going on, and who can say Gog and Magog can't be used twice for different purposes if they are kind of like a force that gets held back for when God needs to move things forward in a way. Who knows? I mean, Dr. Hugh Manuel said here that in the Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, the heir to the throne comes back with an army of the undead, and he's got this massive army of ghosts following him. And he was saying, how do we know that this isn't the rest of the dead are resurrected and they're not going to fight for Jesus? They're going to be on the other side, you know. So that could definitely bulk up the numbers as well. And to say who Gog and Magog actually is, it's kind of, well, where is Sheol and Hades, where the dead are? Where is that? Is it actually a geographical place in the north, perhaps? If we don't actually, we can start getting these realms of speculation now.
And another thing we should bring up is Game of Thrones. I mean, Game of Thrones, the whole thing with them watching the North Wall, right? They're watching this northern ice wall. And what was behind it was like these ghoulish zombie things, like endless numbers, right? Like Gog and Magog, basically.
Yeah.
Like these people are being held back and you got these knights, like Templars, watching the wall, you know, waiting for probably that 1,000-year reign to end. And then these things are going to be released, you know, to wage war with the camp of the saints.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because just even in that symbolically, just before the White Walkers do start making their march south, the kingdom is in disarray. All the kings are fighting and killing each other and battling for power, you know, and it's kind of symbolically speaking, is that kind of the world that we're living in now?
Exactly.
Interesting metaphors. And again, this is the funny thing, because we're talking about these films like The Lord of the Rings, or you know, the series or the book series of the Game of Thrones. And it's kind of, we see it now. We see the metaphorical link to this little season stuff and the Gog and Magog war. It's all kind of there and always has been there. And it just goes to prove once again, it's kind of like these writers have nothing original. They are just stealing the script and just making money off it, making bank off of it. You know what I mean? And it's kind of, they didn't come up with anything at all. Stephen King did not come up with it, for example. You know what I mean? It's kind of like they're just literally stealing obvious hidden truths, the occult knowledge of what's really going on with history in the world, and making fictional movies out of it. And that was a great catch, the White Walker one. I forgot about that. But yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about, isn't it? And it's interesting because didn't the Nazis make a pilgrimage to the north to try and get underground, as you were saying, or so, and they never came back, did they? I think like that's some of them didn't return, and it's
they also went to south. They also went to Antarctica right away too. So interesting.
Because it's funny because your belief is kind of a slight inversion to the popular belief within this little season group. Because most people think Christ is in the center of the flat disc in the north, you know, and that's where that's where he reigns from, the middle of it all. You're saying, you know, it's in the south, and it's not an ice ring. It's actually like a continent, a place on the bottom of the map, and there's a place at the north of the map as well. And there's kind of a, you know, we're in the middle. We're in the middle, basically, of these two.
And wouldn't it be like, you know, the camp of the saints would be as far away from Gog and Magog and where these people are being held back? I would think, you know, the total opposite. One's on one end, and New Jerusalem, the camp of the saints, is on the other end. And we're all in the middle.
Yeah, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But these are the kind of conversations we like to have, isn't it? Let's just throw it out there and say, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Yeah, Gog and Magog is a funny one, because I've always imagined it as, well, the alien invasion stuff's got to get in here somewhere, and if there's suddenly an army of monsters marching from the north, it's kind of, you could play that into it, couldn't they? Like, oh, well, this is evil invading aliens, you know?
What if it is like Nephilim clowns coming and dog men and cyclops?
Yeah, unleash the hordes. Yeah, exactly. Like, well, maybe that's...
People's hearts will fail them, right? Like, people's hearts will fail them when it talks about people are going to be so freaked out. Like, that would do that. You know, I see like Paul Bunyan come walking out of the woods or something. I'm going to be like, what the, you know, there's some big guy.
Yeah, with a huge creepy smile. Yeah. Well, it's funny because even in the Game of Thrones, there's giants mixed in with the White Walkers and the Men of the North and all these type of things. And it's kind of it is a mixed army of dragons and monsters, and anything that gets in its path becomes undead, becomes a part of its army in some way. And again, that also would bring into it the maybe he doesn't necessarily gather an army that's already that number, but he literally goes and takes over people, killing them, and he resurrects to be on their side, and the population of the earth gets converted into this army, Gog and Magog, in some way. Do you know what I mean? It's like the White Walkers do. They just, you know, they kill people and resurrect them and keep joining their army, and they become like a true collective demonic hive mind, all thinking as one consciousness entity of flesh-eating horror, just going further and further and further south until they've fully surrounded the camp of saints. From your perspective, from your narrative and your cosmological worldview, that's kind of how it would be. It would just be a march south, just taking over everything and anything along its way until there's nobody left.
Camp of the saints.
Yeah, and then
which they won't win that, but they're gonna smash everything in the way in the process.
Yeah,
is what it sounds like.
It's a pretty bleak one though. It's a pretty bleak way of seeing it all. Like, being honest, you know, it is. It's not because I've always imagined it more like those who never got a chance to know Christ are living now, you know, perhaps being resurrected to live during this little season in a world where they can know Christ. And is it more like once the wall of death starts to like travel south,
the people that aren't protected by Jesus are gonna, their hearts are gonna fail them, and they're gonna go through a really bad.
So Gog and Magog, in your eyes, are they human? What are they exactly? Where do they come from?
That's the thing. Like, I feel like the Bible doesn't have a lot on it. You know, you have to start getting into, you know, these old Christian books, like the Book of the Bee, Second Ezra, like you were talking about, chapter 13 talks about the assault on New Jerusalem. A great one, Paul, is Saint Brendan, you know, from the saint from England, right? Saint Brendan. So just to let you know, also, the U.S. military, that the U.S. Navy, the patron saint is Saint Brendan for the U.S. Navy. Again, Millennial Kingdom, right? All these nations based off the saints and Christianity. But in that book, The Voyages of Saint Brendan, he talks about seeing distant land, the camp of the saints. He's talking about distant land. That's why I think like Saint Brendan would have been like, you know, the early founder of the Millennial Kingdom. When the camp of the saints, everything's here, they're traveling out, seeing it, this distant land, these saints and righteous rulers. Saint Brendan, he was a saint. He had to be, you know, one of the early parts of when this event happened. And he's talking about traveling distant lands to the camp of the saints. Well, that's what us millennial kingdom people believe, that the camp of the saints is here, whether it's the north or the south, you know.
Well, it's a mix. It's a mix of view. Not everyone thinks it's a physical thing. Some people think it's reigning spiritually in heaven and it's not visible on earth. And I suppose it's like a trickle down effect. As Christ reigns from heaven, the earth began to become a better place during the millennial reign, naturally, because people no longer have.
I'm a literalist. I'm a literalist. And to me, like, how is Gog and Magog going to go and encircle the camp of saints if it's not here?
Well, JT in the chat actually made a good point. It could be a spiritual symbolic thing of those who haven't accepted Christ are undead in a way, and they are the dead surrounding the camp, you know, in a symbolic way. So you could see it that way, and I can see there's room for that interpretation. I myself, I am leaning more towards the literalist view, myself personally, but I'm open to it being either or. I don't know.
Yeah,
you know, but
exactly. We're not experts. It's just our views, and that's what's awesome is that you have JT, you, me, and all different people throwing stuff out there. To me, this is how we're going to get to the truth. You know, it's not by people arguing and not being able to talk to each other because you're mad at each other or on the different sides of the argument. It's great. You know, I'm not talking like I'm 100% right on everything, but it's cool to share our views.
It's a good idea, though, because I'm one of those, let's prepare for every eventuality just in case. And it could be a physical thing, because I think there is this, people forget this long-running alien programming agenda. They're going to make it look like an alien invasion. It's going to be tangibly physical. It's going to be a physical thing. You know, it's not going to be like in our imaginations or a spiritual concept when the mothership turns up in space. It's going to be a real thing people look up and their hearts will fail them for fear from what they're witnessing come upon them, you know. And I think because of that raw, visceral, physical aspect of that particular agenda, to try and square that biblically, I think there's going to be some physical aspect to this end time Gog Magog war. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be literal death as a result of it. And from that view, I'm going to imagine when they say surround the camp of the saints, I think it is going to be a real thing in some odd, bizarre, incomprehensible, not sure where yet type of way, you know. And again, I'm erring on the side of more physical than spiritual, but maybe it's both, because I find it's never just one thing when it comes to God. I think there's this multifaceted way things pan out, you know, and I think there could be a sense of a spiritual aspect to the surrounding as well. Whatever is happening in the spiritual will also manifest physical somehow, and it's going to be an odd thing. There might be a war in heaven, a Gog and Magog war happening spiritually, as well as some physical aspects of that being reflected on Earth at the same time. I think it's a bit of everything, and I can't say I'm excited to see how that pans out, but I think we're definitely certainly there in the timeline. Actually, I want to share something with you very quickly. I've been having a bit of fun, and I was on the Telegram group. See if I can get it up here. I think people can see this now. We're on Telegram, yeah. So on Telegram, there is while this is here, so I'm sorry, I was on Telegram and I posted on the just on my main group that for some reason in my main feed there was I put in the little season subtopic. It was in my main feed, and I've been advertised like an end times prediction video, how it all ends, you know, and it was from a futurist worldview that tribulation's about to come upon us, and they'd laid out like this entire time map of history, and they're saying the 7-year tribulation begins in 2025 and ends in 2031 or something like that, and that's when it's over, you know, and that's when the millennial reign begins, or the new heaven and earth. I don't know what they believe personally on that, but they mapped out with all these things like all the blood moons, you know, and all the eclipses, the sign of Jonah everyone believed happened with the eclipse that went through America not that long ago. He's got all these things, you know, the Revelation 12 sign with the woman with the, you know, the stars and the moon at her feet and all these type of things. And he's laying out this prophetic timeline that, you know, tribulation is about to happen. The end is here. 2031 is the day, you know. And I watched the video and it's kind of like, it's cringy to watch. It's really tough to watch these things. I don't know who made it. I'm not going to say or point them out. I'm not here to point fingers or, you know, lambast anyone particularly. But someone left this funny meme of mental gymnastics. So I took it and I thought, you know what, I'm actually gonna turn it into a meme. So I did just that. People on the screen can see it now, but just so you can see it as well, I'll share it with you.
Yeah, I want to see.
So I think can you see that? Can you see my screen?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just open it, and this is what I created, this meme, just for a bit of fun. So you got the little seasonists at the top. Our world was quite simple. It's okay. So Christ ascended. He told his disciples to spread the good news. Okay. Then he came back quickly with tribulation, not long after he promised, and locked up Satan. And then his saints reigned with him for 1,000 years before Satan was released, and we now live in Satan's little season. That's our belief, basically, summarized. You know, we think it's already happened.
Yeah.
You know, Christ said it was happening soon. We believe him, which would mean we are in the little season right now. But then you look at the futurist worldview, and it's all over the place. It's like, you know, a day is 1,000 years. It came to me in a dream and a vision. This generation means my generation. There's this blood moon, the Revelation 12 sign. Every president is the Antichrist. Swinging from RFID chips to Neuralink. This is definitely the mark of the beast, you know. And it's kind of like, the stars say I'm going to be raptured soon, but the sign of Jonah, it's the correct exegesis, bro. It's kind of like Daniel's 70th week. It's 2,000 year gap between a 69th and 70th week. Like, what are you talking about? You know, tribulation is coming, and that would mean they believe, well, I'm a saint that's going to get resurrected and get to live with Christ for 1,000 years. You know, good luck with judgment, sinners. It's that horrible attitude, and they're always setting dates. You know, insert date here is when it will happen. I thought that's quite funny. I'll just make this meme.
That's great.
It's the idea of it, but the point I'm trying to make is, you really do have to get like some mental gymnastics going to try and square a lot of the things the Bible actually talked about and explained.
Especially like when Jesus said, "I'll be right back," and telling people. I mean, to see the mental gymnastics, watching Christians go through that is painful. That was the one that got me. Like, it's just so clear. Like, why complicate it? Why does it have to be so complicated? It's like with people that want to believe they're on a ball still. You know, you have to go through mental gymnastics to tie that into the Bible somehow. You know, that this is the model. You know, where's heaven? In the vacuum of space on this ball. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's above, what's below? Like, there's just so much difference where we're like talking literalist. To me, makes sense. Like, it's not supposed to be mental gymnastics. It's supposed to be real straightforward, so we all understand it, not need to do mental gymnastics.
Well, I kind of made it as well because I received a comment, which I'm not going to show because I'm not trying to point it out here to like thousands of people or lambast anybody, but they basically left me a comment saying like, this thing you believe, I don't believe it at all. It's quite clear what the Bible says, and what you're preaching here is just completely wrong, you know. And so it starts with that premise, and it's kind of like, you know, I'll pray for you, brother, that you stop, because you have to be careful thinking about these things because you're teaching thousands of people and leading them astray. This is quite clearly, in this time and day and age, a ploy by the devil to cause more confusion. God's not the author of confusion, so he wouldn't release something like this. And it's kind of, I was listening to it and I was like, so. And he makes this distinct comment. So see if I can just find the actual comment he said, roughly. What was it? It basically says, he says he completely and strongly believes that I'm wrong, and that what he thinks the Bible teaches is correct. And then he goes on to say, it's wrong to teach an idea as though it's unequivocally correct because it deceives people. So it's like, whoa. So just because you can teach what you believe as unequivocally correct, but I can't teach this view as unequivocally correct because then it's deceiving people. Do you get what I mean? It's kind of the cognitive dissonance behind the idea. It's one rule for you and a different for me. It's kind of, first of all, I've never preached that I am unequivocally correct with the way I'm explaining this. Do you know what I mean? I've never said I have all the answers and my way or the highway or else. You know, I've never once said that. But I don't think he's realizing it's like what they believe, the futurist doctrine, is the predominant mainline doctrine that everybody believes. That doesn't mean it's correct just because everybody believes it currently. It's, you know, it's kind of, if we are in the little season, what would the devil allow? Do you know what I mean? He would allow the big, confusing, convoluted mental gymnastic version of futurism, wouldn't he? The true, confusing, going against what Christ said and what the apostles believed belief system. And I try to lay out with that meme, what we believe is actually very simple. There's no confusion with what we believe. It's a straight, linear time map, and we've just placed ourselves on that timeline in the place we most likely are, based on the logical evidence that's available to us. But they've got this whole, generation doesn't mean that, and there's 2,000 years. A day to the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day, and it's kind of like you've got all these odd justifications to basically deny the words of Christ and the apostles. It's kind of why? Like, who's the real author of confusion here? It's like me just saying, well, Christ said this, should we believe him? Or this odd, long, complicated 2,000-year unrealistic timescale that makes out Christ to be a liar. Like, I don't I think more people, I'm being jaded here, but I think more people are waking up and realizing, oh damn, there's something to this. Like I think a lot of people are having that moment, and the knee-jerk initial reaction is this has to be the great deception, because I've seen all the signs, and tribulations about, we only got till 2030, bro. Like, it's kind of like, clearly this is the devil's last-ditch effort to make people not be prepared for the rapture or something like that. And it's like, are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure they were saying that in the 80s and the 60s and the 40s.
Well, we could talk about, you brought up 2025, and I wanted to bring that up too.
Yeah.
It does seem like that is going to be, it does seem like this could be a crazy year. Believe it or not, I was telling people back in like 2015 that, well, for a long time, that 2025 is supposed to be the year for these people, like the ones who consider themselves like ascended masters, these people that are ruling from behind the scenes. They do every 25 years, they do some big event. 2025 will be another one of those. Now, the reason 2025 stood out to me a long time ago was Alice Bailey, and these people were talking about that 2025 was going to be like the New World Order's here, and they were going to have this Maitreya, this fake like Antichrist figure, savior coming, and these people have been saying for a long time that it's going to be the year 2025. So I think that there could be something to it. I have been someone who's been talking about the year 2025 could be like this year of this Maitreya or whatever they call this guy that's coming. And with America, we got this whole election thing coming up, and then who knows what's going to happen. I've had my theories on that.
It seems like a pretty tense one, doesn't it, this time round? And I don't know.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like people are very apathetic this time round as well. I think people are a bit. It all seems like a bit of a dream haze. This event, like no one cares really anymore, because they're all just completely apathetic about the whole situation. But then there's like this underlying current of, well, you should care. But it's like, who's really saying that? Because it's kind of like, does anyone trust either of these candidates, really? You've had the whole Q thing for ages, trying to say Trump's playing 5D chess, trust the plan, this is going to be the greatest thing ever, he's going to be our savior. But I think most people realistically are like, nah, he's one of them. You know what I mean? There's no way any of this is like...
I mean, unfortunately, I feel like a lot, maybe the majority, fall for these tricks, man. They're caught up on the left or the right. Where it's more like they hate the one side, so they have to vote for whoever's representing their side.
Yeah.
Like Biden, he was like a corpse walking around. There was nobody cared. There was no anything, But Trump is a big thing, man. Because to me, the whole patriotic American stuff, Trump is like their savior.
Yeah.
They're all like just banking on him. And you got these, I believe they're fake assassination attempts. These are staged. I don't know how, he ducks and it whizzes his ear starts bleeding. And I just, to me, that was total fake. Nothing was done, like nothing seemed real. Nobody was running away. The people behind it just taking out their cameras. In my life, when gunshots go off, everybody scatters. Everybody ducks and scatters. That's what, you don't take out your phone and sit there. Secret Service doesn't stand there and let them stand there. Like, to me, this is all stage stuff. But for the people who don't get it and believe in this stuff, I mean, they're stressed out. They think that Trump could be killed.
Yeah.
Then you got the people that are scared that if he doesn't win, it's basically going to be communism taking over America. And then you have the other side that looks at it. If Trump wins, it's basically fascism taking over.
Yeah, the dichotomy is it's extreme, isn't it? Like the gulf between these two mentalities, and that's exactly how the Hegelian dialectic works. You have the antithesis, the thesis, and we'll see what comes out from that. You know what I mean? The thing they want to produce from all of this. But this, what you're saying as well about the 2025, the coming world teacher, betrayer, theosophical society, Lucis trust, ideology, agenda has been going on for like 100 years in the making. This plan, they're adamant. 2025 is when the world teacher will appear, and this will be a otherworldly spiritual teacher that will lead mankind to the next step in human consciousness evolution. And they really believe this, and they're adamant that this player is going to turn up and is going to change everything. It's going to change the world. Like, it's going to be supernatural in nature, and it's going to all be teaching mankind basically the Luciferian doctrine that all consciousness is one. You can be as gods yourself, and all you have to do is realize your potential and your collective unanimous unity in the ether, and then you can ascend to the next level and become gods like us. And then they'll start bringing in the universalist worldview. All religions kind of got it a little bit right. You know what I mean? But the truth is, it was me. You were all talking about the Maitreya. I'm Jesus. I'm Buddha. I'm whatever. Name the God. And they'll say you were all just talking about me. It's kind of, and someone like Trump or even Kamala, let's say, would probably agree with it. They were like, clearly, let's go along with this. You know what I mean? It's like. And Trump's like, yeah, I've met him, great guy. I think we should all listen to him. It's kind of like, they'll go on. And you can see it happening, can't you? And it's kind of, I think we should listen to what he has to say.
Pope Francis hanging out with him too.
Exactly, yeah. And then Pope Francis is like, oh yeah, we said we could baptize you, bro. Let's get on this together. And it's kind of, but then at the same time, let's get on the 5D chess level here of the little season plan. While that's playing out, you're going to have Christians who are end-time preachers who believe tribulation's about to start, saying, this is the start of tribulation. This is the Antichrist. The abomination of desolation's about to come upon us. He's going to stand in the temple of God and proclaim to be God. And they're all pointing to the... So then they've got a new dichotomy being played out here in the script. It's no longer political left and right. It's spiritual left and right. You got the communist Maitreya versus the conservative Jesus people, and it's kind of that war's going to happen. And then the next 7 years will be a faux tribulation play out. So that timeline I showed you earlier, where this YouTube channel believes that that's all going to happen. Tribulation's about to happen from 2025 to 2031. It will look like that to him. It's going to look like tribulation really is happening because of this world teacher that appears, which will be equated as the Antichrist by the Christians and beloved by the rest of the world, come to free us from war and misery and money and peace, all that type of stuff, and he'll say peace
and the Rothschilds and these people who set up this fake Israel and this whole event that they're going to do, which is going to have people thinking. So
I guarantee the temple will get built and then the whole thing will happen. It's like, but it's all just fabricated. It's not the real thing. That's the point, because it cannot be it, because Christ said clearly he was coming back in his time.
Yeah.
So it cannot be it. Yeah. This cannot be the tribulation event. This
is just some short deception where the Maitreya and these people are just deceiving in this short amount of time.
Well, it's the false light versus the evil light. So you'll have like the light of Lucifer will appear, but it's like the fake light of Lucifer through the Maitreya. And then Lucifer will appear, the devil will appear and say, no, he was a deceiver, I'm Jesus, listen to me, and then everyone will start following Lucifer thinking Jesus has returned to defeat the Antichrist, and it'll be an absolute mess of deception. It's going to be like a multifaceted, layered, complex, just huge, stupid, cheesy Hollywood movie level style deception. You know what I mean? It's going to be, and there's going to be a few of us screaming from the distance, tiny in the distance, saying, "We're in the little season, bro. What are you doing? Stop paying attention to this stuff." Like, and then we'll probably get like lambasted for even thinking such a thing. Because it's kind of like, can't you clearly see tribulation unfolding before your eyes? You know, and we're like,
Yep.
well, yeah, that's the plan. That's the point. Like they've got the script. You know, they know how to play it out for us. But then, like I said, aliens rock up, and it'd be like, the betrayer was like, I told you all, the bad aliens are coming, you know, and then, but that's the real Christ. That's when the real Christ turns up, you know, and that'll be the end game then. Then that's when the whole Gog and Magog stuff probably kicks in. But until that point, we're going to see like they're clearly playing out as a 7-year period. We're going to see a 7-year period in our near future that's just going to be silly. It's going to be absolutely one twist and turn after another, one paradigm shift after another. Humanity's just going to be thrown to and fro in this wave of some kind of scripted Freemasonic Luciferian agenda mess that they've got laid out for
the
us.
order out of chaos. They got to have all this chaos.
Absolute chaos. Yeah. And like,
you know, one of them is the I seen in the UK, in Ireland, the people rioting with the refugees. In America, there's been stuff going on. I recently made a video called The Black Awakening. It's named that because this guy, Russ Dizdar, wrote a book called The Black Awakening. It has nothing to do with skin color or race. But it's basically like these families, these generational Satanists, and how they're creating this chaos that they're going to release one day. Mm-hmm. And they're shoving Muslims, Venezuelans, whoever, to all these places, and that one day they're going to be given, like, you know, it's time, and start creating chaos. And that's something too that I think could tie into with 2025 and what's going on, where we see, because I see there's like straight out riots, right, in the UK and Ireland, like fights in the streets. Out here, we just had like Trump bringing it up with Kamala and stuff, talking about cats and animals being eaten by Asians and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's all like, again, to just all this chaos.
I'm not laughing. It's actually really horrible and sad, the situation.
Yeah,
that agenda is very real. That is happening. Yeah. It's just, again, it's all a point of destabilization, chaos, uncertainty. Because that's what they need people in a state of. The more people can be in a state of, I don't know what the next day is going to bring. Fight or flight mode all the time. Survival mode, next meal mode.
Save me, government. Save me.
Yeah, when the betrayer turns up, people are going to be like, oh, finally.
Finally, we can have a world government now.
Yeah, finally. Something different from the drudgery of the day-to-day misery. Like, aliens have turned up and they're here to save us. Finally. It's going to be that kind of exasperated, secular, atheistic hope fulfilled. You know, it's kind of like, I could not bear getting up one more day to eat, work, sleep, and repeat. You know, I just needed something magical to happen to make life have meaning. And then aliens turn up, this betrayer turns up, you know, and it's kind of like everyone would love that because it shifts everything. And then suddenly all these petty wars and invasions and
we can forget about Trump and
all that just drops, doesn't it? Yeah, and it's kind of like, teachers are wise one. How can humanity become a member of the Galactic Federation like you know, or something like that? And it's just going to be so convoluted and stupid. Like, I'm going to watch it happen. I'm like, are you seriously believing this Hollywood crap they're playing out in front of you right now? It's kind of like they convinced the whole world we went to the moon through TV. They're going to do the same thing when aliens turn up. They're going to convince the whole world aliens have come to help us ascend, and it's just going to be the same media magic. It's going to be the same nonsense. Like, this betrayer, who knows what it actually is? Is it going to be like some fallen angel or something, manifest physical? Or is it just going to be some dude playing a role?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Blonde guy, I don't know.
Yeah, and he'll make it look like he's doing magical things like parting clouds, but they've just got the geoengineering going at full whack. You know, they've turned a harp on for that moment to blast that area, so it looks like he made it happen. And it's kind of like, who knows how they're going to spin the whole thing? But it's kind of like, even though he's coming as the world teacher betrayer, to the Christians, he's the Antichrist. That's how it's supposed to be perceived.
Yes.
That's the point. Like, they want the world loving him and the Christians hating him. And if that happens, perfect. That's exactly how we want it to look. Like, they framed it like that, you know? And then when, you know, Lucifer comes on the scene, the big boss, from their perspective, it's like everyone's going to think he's Jesus. All the Christians are going to think Lucifer's Jesus because everyone's waiting for tribulation, not knowing it already happened over 1,000 years ago, you know? And that's... People always say it's kind of like God isn't the author of confusion, this type of thing. And when you read Revelations 20, Satan goes out to deceive all the nations. What do people think that means? Like, what do they think that means exactly? Deceive all the nations? Because they have this attitude, it's like, oh, well, if Christ was reigning for 1,000 years and when the devil's released, everyone would know Christ is there. So why would they fall for what the devil has to say? The devil would literally be around for a couple of weeks, fail, and then it's done, you know? It's kind of like, no, he goes out and deceives all the nations. So that's all. All means all. Okay? Like, he gets... It's an all-encompassing, huge, grand deception that makes people forget that Christ ruled for 1,000 years. That's the only way he can deceive all the nations. How do people think that's going to... How is that possible? And I think we're trying to explain it here, aren't we? I think we've got a good idea here for these kind of type of like thought processes. That this is probably how it would be done, and doesn't it feel like we're living in that time? Like, I don't know, I'm going off on one now. I'm losing it.
All the nations being deceived and stuff. We are seeing that being go on. I wanted to point this fact out for anybody who still like wants to believe Trump is like, you know, some good guy. The whole thing with there was a Venezuelan gangs taking over buildings. This was like a thing that went viral and people have been talking about in America. And Trump talks about Kamala is the one who's making this all happen. For people, Donald Trump, on the last day he was in office, enacted the law specifically for Venezuelan refugees to come into the country. So he's a liar, just like all the rest. He's not our savior. He's not saving America. He's just like the rest. So yeah, I thought that was amazing when my friend Matt pointed out that on the last day he was in office, he actually made this bill to bring in the Venezuelans that he literally is now blaming Kamala on the left for. So I just want, if anybody's actually thinks Trump's a good guy, I just want you to know that fact right there. So,
well, that's just a part of his 5D chess game. You know, that was just to make Kamala look bad so he could get back into office and carry on saving everybody, you know. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, so...
Well, they got to keep the left-right paradigm, you know, where everybody's fighting. No, it's the left does that, and the right does... They're all the same. They're all serving Lucifer at the end of the day.
Absolutely. No, I agree. It's all Masonic theatre, as far as I'm concerned. Although you have to kind of pay attention to it, so you're not...
Yeah.
You know,
I'm just amazed, you know, because was it... I didn't see, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think my friend Matt said, like, JT follows JC, that he believed that Trump did get shot at or something like that. I don't know if it was him or someone.
I can't remember what his view on was. I think he kind of ruminated about a lot of it. Back and forth about what it could be, if I remember correctly. I don't think he had a specific...
And not even just that. I mean, the majority of people in my life and me, you know, think that it's real, you know, and they need Trump to win, you know, because he's going to save America from the left.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen images. I can't remember this, but I'm pretty sure we've seen after photos now where there's no scar or anything. There's no evidence that anything.
And then there was a second assassination attempt, and it was like, there's no video, of course, and it's basically like some guy just walks up on, you know, Trump's on a golf course, and some guy shows up and gets close enough with an assault rifle, and in my head I'm like, this can't be possible. You know, like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I'm driving home from work, and there's all this traffic, and we're all stressed, like, what the hell is this traffic for? And then, like, in between these spots where people can make like a U-turn, they're putting all like these giant dump trucks. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And it was because Kamala Harris was driving through, you know? So if they have that type of security where they're shutting down highways and doing all this to protect these people, how could people be walking up on a golf course with an AK, you know, within 100 feet of Donald Trump? It does not make any sense. It's not believable to me that anybody would have this chance to get that close.
So what do you think the end goal is? To try and make him just a martyr to guarantee his success? Is that?
Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, for me, I've always said I think Donald Trump's going to be the president and he's going to be like the last president. But now I'm like, I don't know. Are they going to do something like where he's fake assassination, where Trump's killed just to get the right crazy? So there'll be like a civil war? Because I think that would happen. It's so like crazy here, you know, with the patriotic right-wing people, that if Trump was to get shot, fake or not, these people are going to go crazy. I mean, 4 years ago, he told them to storm the White House because the election was stolen, and people did. You know what I mean? So I would think that if he's killed or the election is stolen again, I could see like a civil war scenario, them wanting that type of event to happen.
With that, with the timing of that, then civil war,
2025 and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. You know.
Chaos. We're gonna need Matthias, you know.
Well, can you imagine everyone's like at each other's throats, literally hurling grenades at each other, shooting at each other. You've got two guys strangling each other to death, and then suddenly a giant light comes out in the sky, and they both just stop and look like, then this giant alien comes descending down that all the Earth sees, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, you know, you could see that, couldn't you? You could see that kind of stopping heart moment. It's like, what are we doing? Like look at this, like what was happening here, and I can see that as like that would be when they pull out all the stops, isn't it? You know, the Project Bluebeam stuff. Let's use all our technology in tandem with each other to project that full alien invasion type of spiritual event, you know. Let's make it look like the sky is just torn apart and people can see the true nature of reality now or something. And it's just like some giant holographic projection of like, I don't know, giant cogs turning or something. It's like you all live in a giant clock or something. I don't know. I'm just like saying random stuff now, but it's kind of, they're going to do some weird thing that paradigm shifts the entire Earth. It's like we thought it was this, and now we've realized it's something completely different. It's like a quantum revolution in perceptions of reality. You know what I mean? It's kind of the next step type stuff happens, and I can just see it. I can see they're doing that. I can see they're doing it. Like they've been prepping us for this for so long. I just don't see them wasting all that time and effort and not pulling that kind of trick on us.
Yeah, they got to use the alien card. They have to use the alien card and all this stuff. Like you said, there's no reason why they would, for 100 years, be spending all this time and energy into movies and books and fake reports that the military puts out and everybody to make you believe in aliens and this stuff. So
absolutely. So, was there something else you wanted to talk about today? You said you had a few things before we started. Did we cover it all, or was there? I feel like there's something else missing.
Yeah. No, I think we're getting into basically stuff. I mean, I was willing to, like, if you wanted me to read any of the stuff, like Alexander's Gate, or I didn't know if I should read some of the stuff. Also, if you wanted to play that trailer of the Gog Magog video coming out, if people are,
I won't be able to do that because of copyright stuff. They'll definitely.
Oh, it does do the copyright thing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I won't be able to play the.
That's
trailer.
what I was thinking.
But if you could explain what that trailer is, you said it was I think it was a fully AI created movie called Gog and Magog. Is that what it was?
Yeah, if you just type in Gog Magog trailer or something like that, they're only like a minute or two long. There's 2 trailers. Like I said, it's a Muslim who's made the movie using AI. It's going to be all AI generated, but you know, it's appealing to your eyes because it's like, you know, some crazy like video game type of thing with like zombies, and this is about Gog and Magog and the stuff that us Christians talk about too. And that's when my friend Matt, he was like, so wait, this is in the Quran? And I'm like, you know, so he started like looking into that, and that's where we were getting some more information from the Quran. And that's what I brought up earlier with the Quran saying that it's up in the north. they talk about these 22 kingdoms. I said Ashkenazi was one of these people, but they have like dogmen and all these things. And I haven't seen that in like Christian literature. So
have I'm guessing you've seen the moon map. I think it's
yes.
Vibes of Cosmos is the guy who kind of came up with this concept and this idea. And people are saying, a lot of people believe, especially in the Tartarian reset community, that the reset is basically where it just kind of shifts along the moon map where we now live. There's like a ticking moment where right now we're in like a particular circular area where we have a sun and a moon type thing. Well, we have a sun that goes around, but that sun will move along the moon map to a different region, and that will be inhabited, and the rest of it will turn to ice or something like that again. I think that's the belief system that people a lot of believe, and that's what the reset really is. It's like an ever-shifting clock of where the sun is on the giant circle disc, and we're just in like a little section of that disc right now, where all our continents are. And, and there'll be a shift where we'll move along, and there'll be more. And you're talking about extra land far north and south, and in a way, that map kind of depicts that. Yes, there is kind of an icy tundra north and south of wherever the sun is, making its circular pattern.
Okay.
So that's obviously not quite the same as your square model or view. But it's another one out there. It's another model out there I've seen, because people are saying the moon is just like an inverted monochromatic projection of the whole region.
I've heard people saying that. Even my friend Matt brought that up to me. In my head, again, I have a different model in my head.
It might not even discredit your model.
But about the like more land, like that's what I mean. Like Saint Brendan and that book's talking about more land. Also, the book of Enoch, the first book of Enoch, chapter 29, he's describing this faraway land. The Quran talks about this stuff, this extra land. And clearly, like, we all have to admit, if we're just being honest, like, where all this, and, where could these people be? Where's Gog and Magog on the map that we know of? Where's the Camp of the Saints on the map that we know of? Where's New Jerusalem? It's not on the map we're looking at. But for people who want, again, I know there's a spiritual, but if we're trying to be literal and say that there is a physical location, where is it? Right? And to me, the only thing that adds up is the north and the south that we're being like quarantined away from. Maybe, like I said, in the north, that they're being held back by this giant iron and copper wall holding them back. And the Camp of the Saints, maybe like you said, that guy was saying about like a barrier protecting them, and they're all the way to Antarctica.
Do you have any verses or passages from the section where he talks about the wall being built in the north? Do you have anything to read?
Let's see. With the Quran?
Was it from the Quran, or was it the Book of Alexander or something? Which one was that?
Okay, let's see. I could read. So here's one. This is of Gog and Magog. It says, when Alexander was king, he had subdued countries and cities and had arrived in the east. He saw in the confines of the east those men who are children of Japhet. This is where I'm saying I believe he's talking about Asians, possibly. They were of wicked and unclean than all other dwellers in the world, filthy people of hideous appearance, who ate mice and creepy things of the earth and snakes and scorpions. They never buried their bodies of the dead, but ate them. People ignorant of God and unacquainted with the power of reason, but who lived in the world without understanding, like ravening beasts. When Alexander saw their wickedness, he called God to his aid. Now, isn't this funny? Is we're all taught like Alexander's like this pagan and this and that. And this is what the Muslims will try to argue, that it's not Alexander because he was a pagan. But this is clearly talking about Alexander believes in the Lord and is talking to God. So where was I? Understand, like when Alexander saw their wickedness, he called God to his aid, and he gathered together and brought confines of the north. This is the gate of the world on the north, and there is no other entrance or exit from the confines of the world from the east to the north. And Alexander prayed to God with tears, and God heard his prayer and commanded those two lofty mountains, which are called the children of the north, and they drove nigh to one another until there remained between them about 12 cubits. Then he built in front of them a strong building, and he made it for a door of brass and anointed it. This is what I was talking about. It was like iron covered with copper. Without wilt oil of the snake's oil. This way, I'm sorry, which cannot be burnt off. Basically, like he covers this thing so they can't burn it or do anything to destroy the wall. So that they should bring iron implements near it to force it open. They would be unable to move it, and if they wished to melt it with fire, it would quench it. And it feared neither the operation of devils nor of sorcerers. So basically, like this place, they don't care. Like people could try anything they want. They're not opening this place. It's being held off by God. He was not to be overcome by them. Now there were 22 kingdoms imprisoned within the northern gate, and their names of those are Gog, Magog, and then you got like Ashkenazi. I can't even pronounce any of these words because they seem like Arabic almost. Like dogmen and cannibals. Basically like these 20 kingdoms. And it says, at the end of the world and in the final consummation, when men are eating and drinking and marrying wives and women who have given to husbands, when they are planting vineyards and building buildings, and there is neither wicked man nor adversary, on account of the assured tranquility of certain peace, suddenly the gates of the north shall be opened, and the host of the nations that are imprisoned there, that's the 22 nations, Gog and Magog in them, imprisoned there shall go forth. The whole earth shall tremble before them, and men shall flee and take refuge in the mountains and in caves and in burial places and in the cities of the earth, and they shall die of hunger, and there will be none to bury them by reasons of the multitude of afflictions which they will make men suffer. They will eat dead dog and cats. They will give mothers their bodies of their children to cook, and they will eat them before them without shame. They will destroy the earth, and there will be none able to stand before them. After 1 week of that sore affliction, they will all be destroyed in the plain of Joppa, for with all those people be gathered with. Well, this is the only thing I have on that, a quick clip, but that's like an excerpt of what is it called? Alexander, the Book of the Bee, Alexander's Gate, where they're talking about Alexander seeing these people and praying to God, like let's just block these people off, and how they're held back this whole time until the end, where you heard they come out of the northern gates and they go out just devouring the world. And basically in the Quran, they're talking about Jesus. Like even in this is a Christian version. They're talking about people are going to be hiding right in caves and underground. And the Quran's talking about the same thing, that Jesus is going to be hiding in a cave and people are going to be hiding while these things just devour up everything. And then eventually they're all just annihilated. Like everything's burnt up is how it ends. And that would make sense for the end, as opposed to, like I said, Ezekiel 38:39, where it's talking about it ends and you got all these shields are sitting there and they're burning shields for 7 years. And right, to me, that's a different event. That can't be this Gog Magog one that Revelation is talking about and that the Quran is talking about. So yeah.
Interesting. I just want to make it clear to people listening. I think I don't want them to get confused here. We're not reading the Quran as though it's on level with scripture and that we follow the Quran here. I think a lot of people are getting confused. Like, why are you guys reading the Quran? Are you Muslim now or something? I don't think that That's not what's going on here.
It's the same thing like reading apocryphal books. It's reading early church books.
Yeah, it's to gain a new
It's
perspective
using anything
on
you can.
events. Yeah, exactly. We're just looking at what's out there, resources available that
Yeah.
describe anything akin to
I'm
a
not
Gog and
Muslim.
Magog. Yeah, we're not supporting that in any way as though you should. That's not what we're doing here. Okay, I think just want people to know that and be clear. Like, we are Christian here. That's what we are. We believe in Jesus as the Son of God and the Messiah, not a prophet as the Muslims believe. We're not. Like, that's not what we're doing here. But that is an interesting story nonetheless. Like, it's definitely giving a new perspective on this idea of what Gog and Magog in the future will be doing, as opposed to what happened in the past, you know. When was that written? Do we know roughly the time frame they've given us according to the narrative of history where that was written? Do we know roughly?
I think they tried to say that it might have been like 400, like early church days. The pseudo of Methodius is you could look that up. It's called, let me see if I write this right. Okay. Pseudo Methodius is Methodius. That was one of these early books, Christian books that it comes from. Also, Book of the Bee. Book of the Bee is the other early Christian book where this comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe I was reading that was from Alexander, the Book of the Bee.
Yeah. Just kind of like an apocryphal text or a pseudepigraphical text that was from, yeah. And the Quran corroborates it, but they give a different name to the character because they're trying to make it out from a Muslim perspective who this must have been, and it's just a kind of a...
Yeah, it's not God. It's different names because it's their dialect, their language, but we're talking about basically the same thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's why my friend was shocked too. He was like, wait, like I said, I think it was like his niece sent him a trailer or something of that Magog movie. And he was like, wait, the Quran, like Muslims? But again, I don't think a lot of people realize like how much similarity there is in the Quran and the Bible. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm someone who has said, where I got this also from Flamenco, this is also what Anatolo Flamenco and them believe, that the Muslims, Arabs were actually Christians. They were just a Christian sect, that they're not like this different religion. That's, again, something recent where they've kind of hijacked and changed things and worship Muhammad. I think you had a guy on. I got to be honest, you do a lot of stuff. I don't get to see everything.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know if his name was Hijack, and this was a while ago. Mm-hmm. But I was listening, and he was saying so many things that I was saying. He also brought up about the Arabic stuff. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember and who I'm talking about.
Yeah, the hijacker. He was the host of a radio show called Radio Revolution. I don't think it's the one people are thinking of. There's like a really big public one. His was a publicly funded one. It was a different one that through donations only. But he's been on there for years doing a weekly show. And he heard about the Millennial Kingdom stuff that I was talking about, and he was like, I've got to talk with this guy, because he was like you, just has these ideas bouncing around. And I'm like, well, come share them, whatever. Let's just.
And he said so many things that I said when I first came on, and that's why I was like, okay, so this guy's seeing a lot of the same things I'm saying. Is that the Arabs were actually Christians? These people were Christians. They believed in Jesus and all that. And clearly they're talking about Gog and Magog. That's Revelation and stuff. I mean, so I believe Hijacker said something like Muhammad is just a made up thing. It's like it meant something else, like, great whatever or something. But
well, even Lloyd DeLong is somebody else I've had on the channel. Again, I have a lot of people on the channel with very differing belief systems and different worldviews. So, I just because I have them on my channel doesn't mean I'm 100% in step foot lock with whatever they're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he had an interesting perspective. He talks a lot about Islam, and he's explaining how it's basically like a Gnostic cult that hijacks the original religion. And he was trying to explain how modern Islam is Gnosticism. It's like and I don't think he ever goes into what it truly is, like this whole, it could have been Christian to begin with, but even he's explaining how if you lay out the core tenets of like Islam, it's pure Gnostic theology from the Sufis. It's kind of like and there's many.
Yeah, you got the Sunnis and the Shiites and this split.
It's like, I mean, like the Sufis are like mystics at the top who get divine knowledge given to them by Allah, and only they're allowed to interpret scripture. And it's kind of like there's this whole. But he has just an interesting take on it all. But even he's showing, historically speaking, it's like a fake made-up religion in the modern age. It's not as old.
It is. That's what I'm trying to say.
As they're trying to make it out to be. It's actually quite a
like
new
1800s. It's like 1800s to me.
Yeah, it's actually really new. Like what we have modern, but all media you see about history tries to make it out. It's like this ancient, old religion that's been around forever, and it's kind of like, but it's actually really not. And and this is getting really out there now and controversial. But even if you look into like modern day Hebrew and stuff like this, that could even start to get a little bit questionable about its origins and
well, flamenco and them say that all the Jewish stuff we're seeing now is again recent. This was all because it was destroyed. It was done away with. And for us who believe in the millennial kingdom, everything turned Christian. There was no more being Jew or pagan or anything. It was, we all know Jesus is real. Jesus is king. And we're all rocking with Jesus. There was no anything else.
Well, it seems like there was a re-emergence of all of these old world
Egypt
religions.
too.
Yeah.
This revival of Egypt and this and that.
The new Rome was established in the New World Order, and it's kind of all these old pagan belief systems were kind of revived with a new name and new skin, and it's kind of that's where we get a lot of these religions from. And but this is the point of the theory. It's kind of like we have to completely reinterpret history, like what we've been told about these things we live with today. The history they've told us is not valid. Like it's a lie. Like it's not as old as we think it is. It's all pretty much just made up in the past 300 years. It's all just a convoluted nonsense, like basically including a lot of these religions. And a lot of people say to me, it's like, well, what about the Christian religion? Why could that not also have been one of these made up religions? Because everything's attesting to it being completely true. And that it's the reason why we have a timeline deception. That's why it's the exception, not the rule. Everything else fits this odd rule. You know what I mean? It's that this one thing doesn't. The timeline of Christendom and this Millennial Kingdom passage. This explanation of a time where things will change and there'll be a little season of complete deception. It's a wholly biblical concept. Like none of these other religions are really explaining it like that, or putting it into a timeline perspective like that. So that's why I say I don't. It's hard to cover up fully a millennial reign of Christ. I think they've done a good job at trying, but all they can do is twist people's perspective and shift where they think they are in the timeline. That's the best they can do, because it's really hard to erase that fully from people's consciousness. So shift people's perspective of the timeline and invent new religions surrounding it to confuse the matter. I feel like that's more like what happened here.
Yeah, just like Krishna to the Hindu. I mean, it's all like plays on Jesus and these and they make it like these are these old India and this is all new. This is all like 1800s by the Jesuits, basically destroying it. Maybe that's again the devil was released maybe 1776 and not 2000, whatever it was, where they went around deceiving and changing the religions and the nations. Getting deceived.
Yeah, So I'm not saying what I'm saying here, because people say like, what about these cultures are like 4,000 years old, these dynasties in China that go back for like 4,000 years.
Nonsense.
And it's kind of like maybe there's some validity to some of it somewhere, but it's
India wasn't even a country till like 1967. Like,
it's not the time. A lot of history is just not talked about, and it doesn't go on for as long as we think it does either, because people are talking like, 10,000 years ago. It's like there hasn't even been 10,000 years worth of existence. No. Like
exactly. I mean, the King James, doesn't it say like we're only like about like there was 4,000 years before Jesus, so there can only be like 5,000-6,000 years if you want to be a literalist and go by the Bible.
Biblically, literally speaking, it doesn't work. These dynasties are not that old. Like it's not as ancient. Like, it's like ancient Sumerian civilization, the oldest civilization we know is like 6,000 years old. So you're telling me even our own historical mainstream record can't really go further back than that for civilization. Is that what you're telling me? But then they add on top of that, don't they? But millions of years ago, big lizards were walking around with feathers looking like chicken monsters. And it's kind of like, okay, right? So, yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is a mess. It's an absolute mess. And I'm kind of happy, you know, that we're all kind of...
What did you and your audience think about where I also brought up about the obelisk being a Christian symbol, not an Egyptian phallus for Osiris?
I can't remember much reaction towards that comment, but I do remember you mentioning that. I do,
because I still, everywhere I go, I keep seeing them in Christian cemeteries. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And how can someone? There's no way anybody's going to convince me that these people from the late 1800s, early 1900s that are buried in all these Christian cemeteries are putting up Osiris's penis as their headstone.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. There has to be a Christian symbol, to me, and that's what Flamenco and them believe. They also believe like the Ankh. You see those Egyptian pharaohs, and they're holding it's the Christian cross. And that's why I'm saying, like, I think that this is millennial kingdom structures and stuff that they're covering up and hiding, saying, no, that's Egyptian. No, that's Hindu. That's some really old Indian stuff. And I think it's all nonsense.
It's funny. I was listening today to JT, his recent talk, and he was talking about the apotheosis of George Washington and stuff like this. And really interesting, really fascinating. Like, why is George Washington being made out to be like a pagan god? 20 years after he died, this statue's being made of him like he's a Roman Kaiser. And it's kind of, but then he goes on to talk about, if you look like Egyptian culture, and you've got these amazing laser precision polished marble sarcophagi, you know what I mean? Which are like, who the hell built?
Real primitive.
It's like, who built this thing, you know what I mean? To this, at that time, to such high precision. And what they've done, they've kind of like carved onto them these really crooked, horrible, childish looking hieroglyphs. And it's kind of like they were clearly put on afterwards, way after the architect who originally built them.
Yes.
It's kind of because they're just so crap, like they're so poorly made. But the thing it's on is like perfectly precise and straight and like angular, and you can't get any more perfect than the design. But then these people who were told built them can barely draw pictures on them in straight lines. It's kind of none of it. It's like graffiti, basically. It's made, well, yeah, something like that. It seems like it really is just...
Well, to go to Anatolo and Flamenco in those books, they talk about a lot of these temples and places where we're seeing those images now. They were recently drawn and they plastered over the original symbols. And when you take, and some of these places still had the original stuff behind it, and it's all about Jesus Christ. It's all about Jesus Christ. It's all Christian stuff about Jesus.
Incredible.
And recently they started covering it up, probably with this new age fancy stuff that they were trying to create to hide the millennial kingdom, in my view.
Just a sun god, just representing Jesus is the symbol for the sun.
Yeah. You know, like to me, like the pyramid that we see everywhere, and we right away think of Masons and it's evil, but I literally think that could be a symbol for like Mount Zion or New Jerusalem, or literally like where we're living. Because again, I'm saying it's square. So the bottom of the pyramid is a square, and then, you know, with it going up, God being at the throne at the top, or like, you know, you guys say in the middle, that would be the point of the pyramid.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a good way. It's a good way of viewing it. Yeah, no, I'm open to all possibilities with this. Still, with this idea, it could be, and again, I think a hijacking of God's kingdom and twisting it for their own is likely what they would do, you know, because they can't hide it, they can't destroy everything, so we have to claim ownership.
If they're pushing futurism, right? If they're pushing, which it seems like the Jesuits have been doing from the 1800s again, like this whole futurism, well then, yeah, you would have to say, no, that's not a millennial kingdom building. That's, you know, that was Greek, that was Roman, that was Egyptian, that was something else. You know, that symbol is a Masonic symbol for Lucifer, you know, but it's like, wait, no, that's actually, that could be a symbol for New Jerusalem. You know what I mean?
Well, I think Conspiracy R Us does a lot of videos like this, kind of looking at all these old world buildings and architecture and the symbols on the signs on them and all this type of stuff. And I think he did recently was find some old coins from like the 1500s or something, the 1600s. And they've got like a floating city in the background in the sky on these
And New
coins.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, it's what I mean. And it's like they're all pretty much upset. But you also see like an eye in a pyramid instead sometimes swapped out for the city, which is quite interesting. So some of them literally have like a flat disc flying saucer city glowing in the sky in the background, or they've swapped it out for a pyramid with an eye instead. And would explain if Jesus was floating in the sky in a city, the Son of God himself was there, and he is the capstone of the pyramid. He is the all-seeing eye of providence looking over his creation. Then that symbol originally may have represented God and Jesus. Yeah. But then when the Freemasons came around, they hijacked it and made it represent the grand architect of the universe, and then twisted it slowly to mean Lucifer. And now all of us out there are pointing to that symbol saying that's an evil symbol and it's satanic, it represents Lucifer. Maybe originally it didn't. Yeah. It didn't. And again, I'm crossing dangerous lines here now. Everyone's got saying, "Oh, you're clearly a Masonic shill trying to get us to love Masonic symbolism." And it's kind of like, look, we're just...
to get into like George Washington that you brought up with JT. I mean, if you look at the oldest stuff and the stuff that was written in his time frame, allegedly, it's all about Jesus. He's about Jesus Christ. There was like a famous painting where he was like kneeling in the woods, like praying, and like some guy comes out and sees him and was like, man, this guy's like a real Christian. You know what I mean? Like everything was about, he was the real deal, all about a man of God. And everybody looked up to him and was like, this guy's a real Christian. That's the early books. Then now we got all these books where it's like, he was a Mason. He was this, he was that. He was a deist. He wasn't a Christian. He was, I think that's them just trying to hijack and change our history and make it like all these people are them, and hiding that everybody was Christian and a part of this millennial kingdom. And the people that were in power were legit, really good Christians. And maybe George Washington, these people were legit good Christians, and they're trying to hijack it. Like to me, the Christopher Columbus thing is something I love to keep pointing out. It does not make sense. You got two different stories. The early stories is Christopher Columbus is this great guy. I read some of the early books where they were like, he was saying that people were cleaning their feet with their hair. That's what Mary Magdalene did for Jesus. That's Christian. He was talking about how great these people were. And then you got this new Christopher Columbus thing where it's like he was this evil white European and smallpox blankets and beating them for gold. And why would these people worship someone like that for 500 years? Why would they celebrate their conqueror? Why would they celebrate a guy who came and committed genocide on their people? It does not make sense. He had to be a really good guy that all these people like loved him and looked up to him. It wasn't an evil white European came and killed our people. This was a good guy. And that's what I'm saying. I think they're hijacked things recently, and you know, because there's times where I'm like, I don't know, was George Washington, Mason, this and that, evil from the beginning? But if you go into the older stuff, there's none of that. It's these are Christian people. And I think the story of Christopher Columbus is literally really about Jesus Christ. I keep saying, look at the name, Christopher. So you got Christ, and the old English spelling, it's like an OF that's like of. So Christopher of Columbia or something. It could have been like a play on words where they were like, this is Jesus Christ from Columbia, which is a place in America or South America. And that could have been the thing. They were talking about Jesus Christ showing up, not some white European handing out smallpox blankets, killing everyone. You see what I'm saying? Like it doesn't add up. And them trying to say that George Washington is this and that doesn't add up to me, because the early stuff is all about his faith and him being a real Christian, it seems like. Him praying all the time. So
I think confusion's the name of the game here. We are never going to know the truth about any of these people now, like, because the historical record's been edited and changed, and we can't.
Now they're all just evil white Europeans.
We can't go back in time and actually look into this and corroborate what is and isn't fact or fiction with it. You know, all we can do again is get these slight inferences and like odd things that don't line up, different people's testimonies of encountering them. and so forth. It's possible if what you're saying is true, and George Washington was like a perfect Christian man of God, you know, trying to keep the kingdom strong in his homeland type of thing. But then once he won, you know, maybe he didn't really win, and he was hijacked as a character, and his entire name was besmirched, and they purposely represented him as a pagan god on these statues and put him on these buildings because that's what he wouldn't have wanted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like it was a spitting in his face. So from that perspective, that's how I would explain it.
Look at Alexander the Great, right? We're all taught Alexander the Great, right? He's like some pagan. But here it is. Oh, and here's another thing for people if they want to know. It's also called the Alexander Romance. These were like big medieval times books. And it's talking about Alexander's worshiping God. He's talking to God and getting help from God. So where is this? How is this, you know, the pagan? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think all these people in the past were like men of God and Christians, and why people looked up to them, why their name stayed in history, and why they were so important.
I mean,
now they want to hijack everyone and say everybody's a Mason, was, you know.
Well, I remember watching years ago, you know, when this idea was first breaking the internet, this Millennial Kingdom stuff, and it was exploring Tartaria's work on it, and she was basically going through King George, or Saint George, the patron saint of many countries, like, and he's always depicted riding a horse with a spear, wearing armor, killing a dragon. Like, that's below his, like, he's trampling on a serpent and spearing it in the mouth and killing it. And even Conspiracy Horror recently showed there's coins in Arabic showing what looks like Saint George or King George, this character slaying the serpent on a horse. It's the exact same image, but in Arabic. And it's kind of like, this coin doesn't make sense, like, in terms of like, what was this? And I think Exploring Tartaria was looking at these images and these paintings of Saint George and basically explaining this is basically Jesus. This is just another version of Jesus they've renamed in some way, going around.
Or it was like saints, like Saint Brendan and these people that were going around fighting dragons, King Arthur or whatever. Like,
it could, well, even his saints were probably given that power as well in some way to do this thing. But it's kind of like the influence was so far spread. And she was looking at all these kings everywhere during this time as well, and they all look the same. They've all got a brown beard with a very stereotypical Jesus-looking face, and it's kind of, they all have all these many names, you know.
That's what I mean. I feel like Christopher Columbus is really Jesus Christ, and that they're hiding that. They don't want. They want to make it like some white European came and did all this stuff and forced them to worship Jesus and taught them Spanish, and, you know, Christopher Columbus, they admit, like, never even landed in America. He landed in like the Caribbean island. Like, all their stories don't add up. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so the guy didn't even land in America, and you know, and if he did, he killed everybody, and you guys worshipped and celebrated this guy for 500 years. Is what you're telling me. No.
Well, maybe
it had to be Jesus Christ.
Maybe there was a character though after the kingdom that did that. That did go.
Yeah, like Millennial Kingdom people. That's what I'm saying. Like a Saint Brent, like these saints that came back and now are ruling and setting up this Millennial Kingdom.
But it's also possible after the Millennial Kingdom, there were people like the evil Christopher Columbus, who did exist, who was a white European evil colonizer type Satanist, who did go and murder loads of people in America, you know, and they've equated the two characters to be the same in history. They could have just done that, you know, like Fomenko's explaining how you've got these two timeline. He just draws these timelines of events out, doesn't he? And he says, but over here in the world, apparently these events were happening in like 1,000 years later. But you put them side by side, and they're the exact same series of events, but all the characters have a different name. And it's kind of saying,
basically like, they talked about, what is it, like the Battle of Troy, that these are all like these phantom events that they've created for everyone. And that's what I've talked about too. Like, China is being told exactly what people in South America and Africa and everyone, we're getting our history from the Catholic Church, directly from the Jesuits. And this has been done recently, you know. clearly, like my great grandfather was coming, even in 1921, everything was about Christianity.
In the year
There was no messing around.
Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord, Iesus, was it
Yeah.
1921? Like, it's kind of okay. You know,
And,
going by
and you
the Greek.
know, they want us to think like the ball, and the ball wasn't even like, nobody started believing until like the 1960s and stuff like that.
Mhm.
You know, I've talked to, now my mom's uncle is 99 years old. He's 99 now. And you know, he's the one who talked to me about the orphan trains and this and that. And he remembered them. But they weren't being taught that they were on a ball. They, you know, but they wanted us to think like, you know, Galileo in 1492 and all these people knew that they were on a ball, and, you know, and this is, all these stories are nonsense, man. This is all just Jesuit recent creations to throw off, I believe, the millennial kingdom. And I think everything here has to do with Jesus and God, and isn't pagan, and or any of that.
Mhm. Well, the interesting thing is if the timeline we've kind of speculated about here is true, so it was actually 2000 when the 1,000-year reign ended. When your granddad came in 921, which is now said to be 1921, which it really isn't, then the little season really has just begun. Like,
Exactly.
we're not deep into it. Like, it's from this perspective. Like, a lot of people think we're like 200. We're already 248 years into it or something like that. We only have 2 years left before it's 250 years. Because
that's what I was thinking at first. Like maybe 1776, right? We see the Statue of Liberty and a lot of symbology, and we're like, okay. And we're taught about these founding fathers that they were, you know. But again, that might be the deception that has recently been thrown out there, to make us think that George Washington wasn't, you know, this great person, to make us think Columbus is this and that. I think that's very possible.
To get really out there, I'm speculating here, but it could be that because Christ, in a way, according to the book of Esdras, had receded halfway through the reign and hidden himself, and humanity was left for like 500 years to their own devices with this kingdom he'd built, that, well, maybe the evil people managed to build monuments in preparation for the release of their god, Lucifer. So the Statue of Liberty, you know, these civil wars that started to kick off, even during the millennial reign, these were happening, you know. It wasn't all peace and loving.
Yeah.
It's kind of, these were the bad guys preparing the way for the coming of Lucifer and the release of Satan from the pit. You know what I mean? They were establishing themselves, building idols, destroying architecture, besmirching, you know, covering up architecture, changing facades, adding numbers onto the end of dates, you know, adding numerals. They were doing all these things, erecting statues dedicated to Lucifer and his chain being broken. So when, you know, the devil's released after the 1,000 years in the year 2000, it's kind of like he's coming into a world that they've prepared for him. You know, it's kind of, it's likely that's probably what the past 250 years has really been. It's been the establishment of the New World Order. And it began in 2000 with the turn of that end of that century.
Like you said, they were probably like starting to, but they still had to be like hidden kind of, because look at right now, man, like with the transgender and all this crazy stuff going on. Like even when I was a kid, and I'm not that old, this stuff wouldn't have flown. Like just not that long ago.
Well, absolutely.
It's just so recent. Like it really could just be recently.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why the need for secret societies. Why the need for such secrecy? Exactly.
If they were in charge and had nothing to worry about, you wouldn't be hidden. It'd be out in public, like the Romans and these people were allegedly doing.
It's been subversion since 1776 and the establishment of the Bavarian Illuminati. If you want to go off the Wikipedia version of history, you know, let's say it was that time period, 1776. Well, they've had like 200 and something years, you know, 250 years to basically, through subversive means, get the tentacles into every form of control, media, government, medicine, whatever, name it, they've got into it, you know, education and the rest. But they've had to keep it hush, hush, secret, only people with the handshake, you know, what's going on type stuff, you know. And they've been doing it slowly. It's a great work, as they call it. They've been doing it slowly, generation after generation, keeping it in the family. And then the release of Satan, 2000, bam, let's bring those towers down to mark the generation with a great sacrifice. You know, let's celebrate this. And now they're out. They're open. Now
The two
everyone knows.
towers.
Yeah, everyone
Yeah.
knows them now. Everyone knows they're there. No one knows that they're hidden. And I made a video recently talking about that event, 9/11, and what it means to us and what happened. And I'm looking
Okay.
back at it with a new perspective now, and it's kind of like they wanted us to discover them then. They were purposefully making that whole event so easy to break apart. Like, they gave us this crappy, weak official narrative, which was so obviously crap, and everyone easily broke it down and got to the truth of the matter quite easily, that there's a cabal in control of everything. It's kind of like, no way did they make that mistake after being so good at keeping it secret for so long. They wanted people to know they existed then. They were like...
It's like they don't have to hide no more because Satan's in charge now.
Exactly. It's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Now we're in power right now.
Exactly. That's what it feels like. And since then, it's kind of like now...
They're shoving everything right down our throats now.
Well, exactly.
Like now we can't, now it's like no holds barred. It's like,
well,
whatever debauchery or whatever, it's right there.
Anything goes now.
Snoop Dogg representing America at the Olympics. I mean, it's done, man. Like, they don't care. No. It's just right in your face.
But there's an apathy about it now. Like, most people, day-to-day normal people, we'll call them normies, but even the conspiracy theorist people, just people in general, we all know they're there. We all know it. And they know we know they exist. And it's kind of like they're out in the open now. But you know what most people think? So what? They don't care. It's kind of, they're apathetic. It's like, well, even if they are there, I mean, what can I do about it? Whatever. That's the kind of blasé. It's like, look, I got to get to work tomorrow. I don't have time to care about that. If they control the world, then whatever, just let me do my thing. And it's kind of, most people are just over it. It's like, yeah, of course there's evil people that control the world and have an agenda, but, I've got my beer and my TV. I'm fine. It's kind of like, it's like, it's not hidden. This is what I mean. Everyone knows it. And
if you look, you'll see it everywhere. Yeah,
absolutely. Right. Well, we're almost at the 2-hour marker now. I think it might be a good time to leave it. We've been going. This is how it goes, isn't it? You just go off on one. And 2 hours. It's 2 hours later, and we're still going. But I think we should probably leave the show there. Is there anything you want to let people know before we close off? I'll let you have some closing statements there.
Well, again, thank you, Paul, for everything you're doing, and thank to the audience and everyone. I guess for me, tomorrow, actually, I will be on Killer Priest. I'm bringing a special guest. I think some of your audience might like. I'm big into like life after death. I don't know if I mentioned it last time I was on, where I'm like Lee Strobel, who did the Case for Christ. He also does the Case for Heaven, and just looking at so many things that people who have died and have seen hell or heaven. And there's a great channel called Touching on the Afterlife. It came out maybe about 8-9 months ago, this woman. And it's like every couple of days, there's like a new person on there talking about how they died and what they saw. And one of the guys was a Chicago gang member who got set up by his boys, shot in his head, and died. And when he was in hell, Jesus saves him. And I've been wanting to get him for a while. So it's been a couple months, but finally I set it up. He's going to come on the Killer Priest show tomorrow with me, and I'm going to have him giving his testimony. And I think it's going to be a really good show. And, like I talk about, I'm Christian. Killer Priest in that audience isn't really a Christian audience, but little by little, this is things that I do. And I feel like this is a great way, is bring like this gang member from Chicago who is going to tell them the story, and for people, I made a video, I think it was called Do Not Judge. No, Lord, Give Me a Sign. And I have some clips in that from this show. And I mean, like a Buddhist guy, here it is, like a Buddhist who nothing to do with the Bible, doesn't believe in Jesus or anything like that. And he like kills himself, and Jesus is the one saving him. That I got an Arab Muslim people who are worshiping Muhammad and this and that, and they die, and Jesus is the one that has to save them. So I think this is really good, powerful stuff for us Christians, and something that could strengthen your faith, and again, let you know how real this is. So yeah, if you people want to check that out, I'm gonna be doing that show tomorrow. I'm excited to do. And my channel, I'm trying to add videos when I can. I'm Vinny B planting seeds on YouTube. The channel's staying up, and I'm trying to add stuff when I can. So if anybody wants to check me out there, check out some of these videos, check that out. I recommend the Book of Enoch video to again explain my view on a square Earth for people to get a visual. And yeah, that's about it.
Perfect.
Yeah, let's throw that out there. So
yeah, so Killer Priest podcast tomorrow. Special guest talking about life after death. That should be interesting. If people who don't know, Killer Priest is an ex-singer of the Wu-Tang Clan. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was on the original. He was when they first came out. He was on the first album and a part of it. But then he basically went his own way and didn't really stay with them. But he's still friends with the RZA, and he's technically a part of Wu-Tang Clan. And he's friends with all the guys and this and that.
That's it. And like
it's funny because Wu-Tang Clan has a series on Hulu. If people have Hulu, you can see Wu-Tang Clan they did a series. I think they have 2 seasons. And I think in this last one, they show you where Killer Priest is there. They got, not him, the actor playing him. And you see like one of the guys mad that Killer Priest is like, being considered part of Wu-Tang Clan and getting paid to be on tour. He's like, oh, so Killer Priest is part of Wu-Tang, So, yeah, there's a little story to Killer. He was part of the original, but then kind of went his own ways. But yeah, he was part of Wu-Tang Clan.
just a little tidbit of information if people don't know, just for context of whose podcast you're on. And they're not really a Christian podcast, are they? They're more of a, I suppose you'd say new age kind of, but they've also go into like the Egyptian stuff, and they're kind of people know it.
Like a lot of these people where it's all about knowledge and like higher consciousness.
Yeah, and you're the Christian voice in the midst, showing them the Christian perspective. And I've heard you argue a lot with some of them. I've heard it. I've seen it. It's quite funny. Yeah.
Well, when I first showed up the first day, oh my God, when I started talking about Jesus and stuff, all the questions I had to battle with some of their guys.
Hey, well, they invited you back. That's the point, So you've told them something they want to hear, which is great. So yeah, go check that out, guys. I'll leave links down below in the description for Vinny's stuff. Go back to his channel again, Vinny B Planting Seeds is where you can find him. And yeah, it's always interesting to get his alternative cosmology view. And I like Vinny because he comes on with a different perspective that I'm not used to hearing on most things.
Thank you.
It's a good back and forth, and it's again, guys, the guests I get on my channel, if they all have varying opinions and beliefs. That's the point of this. I'm not here to force my belief.
Thank you, Paul. Just like Killer Priest, he lets everyone on. So, that's something to appreciate. So thank you again, Paul, for letting this crazy attack come on and talk this stuff.
Same time again in another 2 months, Vinny, absolutely. So yeah, there you go, guys. I'm gonna close this show out now. Thanks for listening. And as always, God bless.
God bless.
When ordinary people think of autumn, they imagine shorter days, cozy fires, curling up with a great piece of literature, and basking in the warming scent of cinnamon with shades of burnt orange, which your other half has decided to spend the life savings on to decorate the home for only 2 months, just as God intended. Yet we must remember that this transition into the frosty abyss of winter creates the perfect conditions for the spread of the pathogen known as Halloween. This disease causes people to dress like demons and go door to door asking for free stuff. This public service announcement aims to give you the correct tool to help you deal with these contagious commie behaviors when they manifest in your local community. First, you'll want to arm yourself with multiple shots of the best-selling paperback on Amazon called The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns. With this PPE, you're fully equipped and well protected to handle what's to come next. Second, have a pumpkin spice latte and white girl autumn your time away in knitted cream shackets and pilgrim hats, because soon enough, Samhain begins. This is when the veil between the spirit realm and the physical world is at its thinnest, and possession, the main symptom of Halloween, is more commonly presented, causing this type of unironic cringe to start happening. Just look at him. This poor soul thinks he looks cool. And if you're not careful, this could be you. Together we can stop the spread of Halloween and flatten the curve. When you see fully grown adults playing dress-up and mirroring unspeakable horrors from beyond the void, remember your training and cure their vapid sense of self-identity by handing them one of our favourably reviewed treatments. Your country must develop herd immunity to seasonal cringe. So, spread the cure far and wide. Just like the cure, this disease does not discriminate by age. Emulating the infected, you will see children running around in bedsheets, knocking on doors, begging for sugary treats, and threatening to damage your well-earned property. Make sure to fill their novelty buckets with the one thing all children secretly want: a well-rounded and relatable education in biblical history. That'll stop the spread. The Nephilim look like clowns, and the inevitable boost of volumes are currently the only known cure to thinly veiled demon channeling holidays. This is your best defense against this pandemic of spooky proportions. All you have to do is trust the science. Which you know we did, because I'm showing you people wearing lab coats and looking serious. Get your copy on Amazon today, and be prepared for tomorrow. Side effects of reading The Nephilim Look Like Clowns include, but are not limited to, a feeling of existential crisis, a well-rounded knowledge of a Christian contrarian view on human history, a foundational understanding of spiritual warfare, and a healthy aversion to clowns.